I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to speak to you today. Today, my presentation is called the Tao of Courtesy, the Gift of Listening. And recently, Bill gave a talk on giving with regard to the Christmas season and just giving in general, too. And one of the points he made so well was that some of the best gifts are not necessarily material things, but rather the gift of yourself, the gift of actually being present for someone else. And that's kind of what my talk is today. And despite that it's a different theme from what Bill talked about, there's going to be a little bit of synergy in it, because I am going to talk a little bit about the failure of our society in some ways, and maybe how listening and understanding one another can be a baby step towards solutions that end these violent tendencies that I think stem from lack of compassion for others and their points of view. Okay, so I'm going to get into it here. Okay, so I want to start with the definition of the word courtesy. The showing of politeness in one's attitude and behavior toward others. Synonyms: politeness, courteousness, good manners, civility, respect, respectfulness. The part of this definition that most speaks to me about what I want to talk about is attitude and behavior toward others. Because the Tao is a transformative process when you cultivate it. And the manifestation of that cultivating is right attitude and right behavior. That's when we're engaged in the right attitudes and the right behaviors, that's the Tao at work through us. And that's really what this talk is going to be about to some degree. So what I want to do in this talk is talk about a big life-changing tip, and it really is a big life-changing tip. It will change your life in the most positive ways. And it can start with the people you love and that are closest to you, and then it can ripple out to people you work with, to friends, to strangers, to the world, really. And that tip is simply this: listening to others with your full and undivided attention when they're speaking to you. It's a lot easier to do than we might think. And when you start practicing it, you learn how easy it is. And yet, despite the fact that it's easy, sadly, it doesn't happen too much. And I hope to be able to give some tips that may help us along the way. So it seems like such a simple courtesy, but you'd be surprised how many people fail to do it. How many people fail to be truly present, to being open to someone else, to understanding someone else. In order to understand someone else, you have to listen to them. And if we can't have understanding with other people, we'll never get to compassion. And if you can't get to compassion, then it's hard to get to right action and right attitude. So here's a quote from one of my favorite authors. "I like to listen. I have learned a great deal from listening carefully. Most people never listen." I think Hemingway was right when he said this. And he said it a while ago, and it's many years later. And I think sadly it's kind of tends to be true. It's not always true, but it often is. Most people never listen. Often people are thinking about what they're going to say next instead of listening. And this is, of course, an example of one of the great hindrances to Tao cultivation, and that is the ego, the part of us that this thing we call I, that always wants to be the center of attention and always wants to talk about what it wants to talk about. And quelling that ego, or putting that ego aside, or reducing it, is a key part in understanding others and developing compassion, because we have to be quiet inside and listen to others to do those things. Also, many people are engaged in distractions instead of listening, i.e. looking at their phone or some other modern communication device. There's two areas in my life where I notice this a lot. One is when I'm at a party among friends. You know it's going to be friends because the people got invited there. Chances are they know the host at the very least, and they probably know some of the host's friends. And yet what I often see is instead of people speaking to one another, enjoying conversation, I'll often notice people are just wrapped in their phones. Everyone is sort of off in their corner looking at their screens. It's sad, really. And I'm very fortunate that I have friends that are just absolute social butterflies, and they're very good at getting people to be more open to conversation in those situations. And I'm so grateful to be able to have friends like that I can watch and learn from. And the other place I see it is when I go out to eat. I'll look around and I'll see families and friends sitting at tables. And again, instead of having a meal and enjoying the conversation that naturally flows when you share a meal with someone, again, people are wrapped in their devices. It's one of those modern distractions that sort of gets in the way. And I know a lot of families take up the rule that, hey, during meals, you know what, phones get turned off. And I think that's, a good idea, actually. It can be very helpful in promoting the idea of listening and interacting with each other. So the art of listening is lost in many ways in our culture, but if we take the time to do it, it can change your life in a very positive way. And, I have to say, as I look out at the society and, the things that Bill mentioned, violence, lack of understanding, lack of compassion, I don't necessarily have solutions for those either, except like Bill said, to do my best not to participate in it. But sometimes part of me wonders if we were better listeners. It's not that we have to agree with someone, but if we take the time to really listen, to try to understand them and understand that even though they have a view that may be different from ours, if we can understand why it is they have that view, it might go a long way towards not reacting with violence and anger, but instead with compassion and understanding. It doesn't mean that you have to sell out your moral compass, but it does mean that you have to be open-minded enough to at least understand the point of view of another. And to do that, you have to be present in the moment for that person. So one of the things I want to try to do in these presentations, if possible, is to give as much practical advice or tips, or just to point in the right direction of sort of how some practical things that we can do to get to that. How can we make day 4 of the Tao of Joy Every Day part of our everyday life? And so I'm going to do my best to share some practical tips. Now, this first one is sort of customized for Western culture, I have to say, because there are cultures where this may not necessarily be considered polite, but since this is mainly a Western audience, I'm putting it in here. It's good to face the speaker and maintain eye contact. In our culture, that's really a way of letting someone know that you're listening to them. Be attentive but relaxed. As with all cultivation of the Tao, it has to start with calmness. When listening to others, it's good to remind yourself, be calm, be quiet, embrace the yin side of yourself. Allow yourself to settle down and really listen and be attentive. Keeping an open mind. And this is, again, when you speak with people or you listen to people speaking, you're not always going to agree, or you're going to notice something that maybe, their point of view, you might say, wow, they really think that? Wow. But it's important to keep an open mind, to try to reach for understanding and compassion in your interactions as much as possible. Listen to the words and try to picture what the speaker is saying. When I think of this, I think of why inevitably, if you hear this phrase a lot, someone says, the they'll be talking about a movie and someone will inevitably say, yeah, the movie was pretty good, but man, the book was way better. You hear that a lot. And I think the reason why you hear that is because when you read a book, part of the skill of enjoying reading, or just the attribute of enjoying reading, is being able to picture the words that the author is writing. And the better the author, the easier that is to do. But but nonetheless, you form your own mental pictures. And it's good to apply this skill when you're listening to others as well, to really be able to picture what they're saying so that you can understand it. Unlike with the movie where the director nowadays, I mean, our technology is so good, we can bring the words to life in a way that's really unbelievable, but yet still most people still say, yeah, I think the book was better. I often hear that, and I often feel that way myself as well. Don't interrupt and resist any urge to impose your solutions. And I have to say, this is one that I've learned from the women in my life. Women are so much better at listening in general. and also too, it's funny, one of the things that the mistake that I think guys tend to make is we want to impose solutions when we hear people talking about maybe problems that are bothering them. And the funny thing is, women don't necessarily want that. Chances are they already know the solutions because, frankly, they're sometimes quite a bit smarter than us emotionally. No, what they want is they want someone to listen to them and to empathize and understand where they're coming from. They probably already know the solution, but they want someone to help them work through their feelings. And as a man, I can tell you this is something that as men, we could all do better. We can really listen, not resist the urge to impose our solutions, and really work towards empathy and understanding when we listen to others. Wait for the speaker to pause to ask clarifying questions. This, it helps in two ways. One, it helps you clear up anything that you may have not understood about what the person said. But also, two, it lets the speaker know that you're interested in them, that you've really been listening, that you're interested in what they have to say. Ask questions only to ensure understanding. In other words, don't use what the other person say to then segue into what you want to talk about yourself or something else, but instead really just sort of ask questions to make sure you understand their point of view. Try to understand what the speaker is feeling. Obviously, our feelings are unique to us, but in listening, you can do your best to put yourself in that person's shoes and try to understand how it is for them. In speaking, in listening to them speak, try to understand what they're going through and why they're saying what they're saying. This helps promote understanding. And giving the speaker regular feedback is good too. One of the things that's good to do is to paraphrase what they've said. Again, it allows them to understand that you've understood them, or if maybe you haven't understood them, allows them to, by you restating what they've said slightly differently or in different words, it might allow them to clarify the point that they're making. And of course, the 10th thing, pay attention to the speaker's nonverbal cues. There's a host of other human characteristics that speak a lot about what a person is saying or where they're coming from, that go beyond just what they're saying. And that involves paying attention, being quiet, observing, being observant of the other person, not just what they're saying, but the whole totality of the experience of the conversation. That is definitely an important aspect. And the reason, of course, to try to put these 10 practical things into action is because it really is I think the first step to brokering solutions to some of our problems. And our problems, when I look at society, as both Bill and Derek said this morning, there is a lot of violence in our society, even at this time of year, right? Which is, like Bill said, it's supposed to be of peace and joy and goodwill towards men. But like he said, you don't have to venture too far from where you are. You can just go into a toy store and watch parents fight for the hottest toy of the hour, whatever that might be. And also too, particularly what I think about is, especially this year, is the political climate of this country. And I'm not going to bring up any specific politics, but maybe I'll bring one up generally. But it's that sadly we're locked in to our points of view, and we just don't even hear the other side. And I don't think we'll get anywhere doing that. We have to be able to work together to progress as a society. And that involves understanding. And if you can't really, like I said, you don't have to agree with the other person. You don't sacrifice whatever your moral compasses are that keep you on your path, your code of being, which is a good thing to have, by the way. But in listening and understanding, you might gain some insight into where the other person's coming from. And, I am going to talk specifically about an example here, just without tipping my hand as to how I feel about this issue. But if I'm going to pick a sort of hot button topic in the society, and that might be I'm just going to pull one out here, take abortion. There's a side that's pro-life, that believes that all life is sacred, and that sort of their governing principle. And that's not unreasonable. I can certainly see that point of view. And then, of course, there's the other side, the pro-choice side. And the reasonable side of that is, look, we think abortion should be, people who would say we think abortion should be legal, it should be safe, and we wish there were a lot less of it. And, I can certainly see the merits of that point of view as well. But often what happens, no one considers the other side of things. Instead, they just lock into their position. And there is no attempt to listen to the other side and gain understanding. So if you're, let's say, hypothetically, you're on the pro-choice side of things, and there's someone who's vehemently opposed, they're completely pro-life. Well, in listening to them, you might want to find out, well, why is it that they are that way? And often you might get a story of someone who says, well, I lost a child, lost a baby, maybe a young baby under a year old. And they're mourning and lamenting the loss of that life. And to them, it's just unbelievable that someone could, have a life and choose to abort it. And when you understand where they're coming from, if you are on the other side of the issue, it allows you to have compassion and understanding for that person. Even if you don't ultimately agree, still, it's important to at least not dehumanize the other side for their point of view, but to try to understand where they're coming from. And on the flip side, just to give equal time, if you're someone who's pro-life and you encounter someone who's pro-choice, and maybe their answers are, well, I'm pro-choice because what about the case where a mother's life is endangered with having a baby? What about that? Should someone be expected to sacrifice their own life to bring another life into the world? And there are people who do that, and there's nothing wrong with them doing that. That's their choice. Also, too, what about cases of violent rape? Should a woman be forced to have a child that was a result of that? And again, there are people who do it, and there are people who don't. But the point is, those are moral gray areas. And, to really have compassion and understanding for that situation might allow us to step away from our cognitive dissonance about the other side and to understand that if we're going to get anywhere, we have to understand each other and have compassion for the real situations that go on. And then we can hopefully move to a world where there is less violence and less separation, this illusion of separation that that it's hard not to subscribe to sometimes. I mean, boy, I turn on talk radio sometimes when on my way home, and I often turn it off quickly because what I hear a lot of is just a complete lack of compassion and understanding. And I think, I don't know what, as Bill said, he mentioned he didn't know what the solutions are necessarily except not to participate. Well, I echo that, but part of me feels intuitively if we can start listening to each other a little bit, that may be a step in the right direction. So I want to throw in a quote here from Bryant H. McGill. One of the most sincere forms of respect is actually listening to what another has to say. I completely agree. So I want to start to sum it up here, if I can. Practicing the art of listening to others with your full and undivided attention is a good thing. And also it's a lot easier than it may seem. Once you start practicing it, I think you'll find it'll come quite naturally, and it'll start to ripple out not only to the people that you love, but towards others as well. Because so few people actually do it, it can be a real gift to the people you interact with in your daily life. Like Bill said, one of the best gifts you can give someone is not necessarily a material thing, but just being present in the moment for them. I think, when I look at social media, and I scratch my head sometimes when I see some people just pour out their lives in intimate detail on social media. But then I try to understand and go, people are screaming out to be heard and empathized with and understood. And I think it's because as a society, we've really moved away from listening with compassion and an open mind. And so I think we can all do better at that. Now, I know I want to try to do better at it. Remember not to get distracted by thinking of what you want to say next. Let the ego take a back seat. Instead, be present in the moment and listen to what you're being told. Also, don't multitask while others are speaking to you. Stay away from your devices. Take the time to show them respect by giving the gift of your full attention. Adding this skill to your repertoire can be life-changing, particularly with your personal and business relationships. I think it starts there, but it can ripple out as you practice it and get better at it. So, like always, I want to end with a book recommendation, The Tao of Joy Every Day, a great book to use daily to help one study and learn the Tao teachings and put them into action. So there it was, the Tao of Courtesy, the gift of listening. I just want to wish everyone a very happy holiday season, and I look forward to sharing this time with all of you these Sundays when we meet next year. So Happy New Year and happy holidays to all of you.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架深鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，斜翻一鞠躬。We're done, everybody. Thank you so much.